pursue it and fight people. And not that you ever want to be the bad guy or you want to be that police hammer, but that's the ability the city has to say, we have these laws on our books. We don't want people to be able to own a little garage in a residential area and kind of do their fix-up stuff or whatever, storage unit, you know, and that's just that example of that situation. And it isn't to take away people's ability to do anything, but
the smartest thing would be to rent the garage from the owner.
I think it has been one of our missions to try to grant as many building permits and that as we possibly can under our ordinances to enhance the tax base in the community.
Sure. And
that's why we're here.
Right.
Because we're sure not going to turn somebody down if we possibly don't have to.
Well, I think you guys have, we went through that for a long time. There is a lot of ability for people to do a lot of stuff under this ordinance and still keep a nice, neat community.
There's ways of doing it.
There is. There are ways of doing it, and sometimes you have to be a little creative. And one of the things, you guys never be afraid of calling and saying, how can we make this work? Because we've done that, and we found the wording. I know we had this happen even a couple months ago where somebody said, well, we got somebody, they want to put it on a deck, and we can't seem to figure out a way to do it and make it work within the wording. And we did. We found a way to make it work. We had to go to a couple different sections, and I wish there was a way to make that clear, and I've looked at a lot of different ordinances. I think yours is fairly clear. We tried to make it fairly clear. I've seen some that are, oh my God, I think it was like the city of Council Bluffs or something. I don't know, you'd have to be a scholar, kind of a road scholar to figure that thing out. But apparently somebody does, and they make it work. We're more than happy to walk through and figure out a way to.
After being on the council for 15 years, I know from experience that we have relied on you people to help us out.
And we're more than happy to do that. Like I said, we try to make things as clear as we can, in here. And there's a lot of room for people to do a lot of good stuff.
We ran into an instance where the variance came from the Board of Adjustment. A fellow has an older home, a smaller lot. The garage obviously was built for Model A something, I don't know, and they couldn't even begin to pull their SUV into it. So they didn't have much of a yard, and we had no option but to send. They didn't even have much of a driveway, actually, not even wide enough for a
driveway wasn't even wide enough for a suburban.
Yeah.
Is that 12th Street?
So yeah.
Now what did ultimately was done?
So.
Was it too close to the side yard as it was?
Oh, the back. Well, the back. It's on an alley.
Rear and side.
Yeah.
And they pulled into the garage, but like I said, they had to pull in at an angle to even try to get the vehicle in there. So they wanted to build a bigger garage.
Still couldn't close the door.
No. So here you are with no yard, so to speak, no place to build a garage. I mean that.
Well,
and so you guys, I assume.
And that's where.
Larry Moore.
That's a perfect situation where that's where you got to get in here and look at the numbers and throw some things out there. Actually figure out, okay, we can reduce the rear yards, we can reduce, we can make the garage a little bigger if we needed to. Where somebody really needs to sit down and look and say, okay, this is what you can do.
Is that the process you go through?
Rather than just saying.
Up there, Larry Moore, the only problem we changed or did request for was a side yard. Not coming.
We had to do rear too.
Yeah, but that wasn't really the biggest question, was it? The rear?
Yeah, just as much as.
I mean, as far as
the west side yard or the
but as far as him making a turn going in, you got plenty of room for that.
It is rear yard setback and it's west side yard.
Okay.
Because when you pull into a garage from the alley, then it's a 15-foot setback. Correct?
Right.
And if you have a side entrance into a garage on the alley, then it's only 3 foot setback.
That's right.
He had an alley entrance, and his garage was no closer to the alley than a minimum of 2 and I think 3 on the same lot. Had the same situation already existing.
Right.
That's what this.
That's where we get into the smaller lot.
And in that type of a situation, like I said, I think there's a lot of room for that to be approved under a special exception. Now, again, if that's a situation where, in that whole, you guys have 3 residential districts, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
I know we've changed changed one of them, is that right?
We have 3 on the books, but there's actually no R3 currently on the map.
Okay, that's
We left
right.
that off at the last.
You know, if that's a situation where we need to look at, we got to deal with this area, maybe we got to reduce that and actually put it into law in that, you know, rezone a particular area and say, you know, these guys, we got to get them garages that are going to work, and it's just going to be a tighter neighborhood and a tighter, you know, because that works.
They're all that way.
They're all that way.
That works.
Yep.
Then we should certainly go in and look at that. You know, we don't want every guy to have to come in for a special exception or try for variance. We'll go in there and we got to look at this real close, and that's where you guys can certainly say, let's do that. Let's go into that area. We know the boundaries. It's 6 square blocks or it's 15 square blocks or whatever. You know, but we don't want to do it everywhere because there are areas where they got bigger lots, and we don't want to let everybody have carte blanche. We want to look at that area. We know it's going to be tighter. The people there are going to be okay because you'll have to have a, you know, a hearing. We'll send people notice and say, hey, we're going to do this, and make your recommendation to the council. And the council can say that's reasonable, and the Board of Adjustment won't have to meet every 2 weeks when people decide to start. You know, yeah, we'll look at that area. Maybe we need to create a new residential district and call it like a, you know,
historic something.
Well, historic or a, you know, a concentrated residential, you know, whatever. And, you know, they're.
Okay, what's the difference what you're speaking about now? And it seems like every day in the Fort Dodge paper we're talking about this overlay district that they're trying to do. Is this an overlay district?
Well, an overlay district is kind of a strange animal in and of itself. But an overlay district, generally, the way that those are, that was talked about at one time. That was actually in here in a draft form. Was an overlay district to take some additional requirements that we wanted to put on top of some area, but not necessarily the whole area. You know, it might have been part of the R1 and part of the C1 to say maybe do some design considerations, how the materials used,
right? Yeah.
That type of a thing. So it's and it makes things kind of messy, but there are a lot of communities that do it.
That's exactly the same thing that we were attempting to do.
Right. You know, and you didn't want to create a whole new district and chop up, you know, the existing R1 and the existing C1 or whatever, but you wanted to add some provisions, but again, not to cover the entirety of those. Yes.
I have another question. When you were talking about grandfather, and this I guess would be pertaining to animals, because there's certain places in the community that have animals. Now, once that property is sold, then that grandfather is gone. Is that correct?
Animals.
Well, like livestock.
Yeah,
Livestock.
horses.
Inside the city
cattle,
limits.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those things.
You're getting into some ag rules now.
It was my
Yeah.
understanding. that
And they
once the
can,
livestock
they
is
do
gone,
have precedent over certain
for 6
planning and
months,
zoning rules, I do know
then-
that.
Well, agriculture cannot be zoned in the rural areas. Cities can zone. Say you can't have animals, you can't have animals. What comes down to, as long as the use doesn't change, the property owner can change in that situation. If I got a property and we got horses and I sell it to you, and you're going to keep having horses and nothing's going to change, that can change. But once
they're without
that
horses
use
for 6
changes,
months or whatever.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if it's a year
What do you look like?
or 6
Sure.
months.
Right, where she has cattle.
Well, that's right. That's true.
And it can't be, well, they had cattle 5 years ago. That was grandfathered in.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Because the barns are there and the gates are there, whatever else. That's not a situation.
Going back to overlay in these special areas,